Hi there, it's Emily, and I've been seeing a lot of people say how Sony's recent decisions is making it look like Nintendo's game key cards aren't all that bad. And while I can understand the sentiment, I do think we've lost the plot a little bit here, especially when it comes to what direction we want physical media to continue going towards. Now, Sony has definitely made this physical media situation for modern games much worse by just saying that they, mid-console generation, are abandoning physical games on disc. And the backlash, I think, is definitely warranted. It's understandable why so many people are frustrated and definitely hyper-focused on Sony and blaming them for trying to speedrun us towards the all-digital future. But I think we have to remember, just because Sony is making physical gaming worse, that doesn't automatically make Nintendo's game key cards a good solution. Those aren't just the two options we have. Both can be bad, and it's okay to say so and call it out. I really don't think we should be lowering our standards for physical media just because another company has lowered the bar even further. Now, I'm sure I'll get plenty of people down in the comments who just see the title and just comment away that game key cards aren't bad because they are still physical. They are still physical objects you could put on the shelf, and you could also resell it if you wanted to. And I'm not trying to say game key cards don't have their perks. There are pros and cons to everything. But I do think that if we just accept game key cards as the only physical option, it's going to give us a worse consumer experience down the line. A game key card just will never replace a true physical. And that is just how it is. Because what they are, even though they are a tangible physical object that you could put into your Switch 2 and power it on and play the game through there after downloading it from a server, you still have a reliance on a server. So this is not a plug and play sort of option, especially if you don't live somewhere with reliable internet or Wi-Fi connections. And there are questions of long-term ownership. How long are these servers going to last? And there's definitely going to be very strong opinions, I think, about this from Nintendo fans who have faith that Nintendo will always keep these servers up and live, and it's nothing to worry about. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm running into some issues with internal storage on my Switch 2, and I've only owned it for a few months. So I think this is going to be a growing problem, and those who claim like you just have to download the game one time from the server, and then it's yours for life, this is not taking into account having to clear up space to play more games on your device, especially given how large a lot of these file sizes are becoming, especially for a lot of AAA modern games. And also, we've been seeing a lot of failures too with those external memory cards people have been buying, especially the cheaper ones. It doesn't seem like this is going to be a very good long-term situation, and you may have to end up downloading the game more than once from the server. But I think if someone had to choose between a game key card and a true physical, wouldn't you rather have a true physical that has the perks that is missing from a game key card? I can definitely acknowledge why publishers would choose a game key card over a true physical. We've seen Square Enix cite that for Final Fantasy VII Remake, they had to go with a game key card because of the file size of the game. It wouldn't fit on the maximum size, which is 64 gigabytes. And the read speeds just are not fast enough on those true physical cards for their game, is what they've claimed. So I can understand why Square Enix would choose for something like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, why that would be a game key card over a true physical. The other major reason we're seeing a rise of game key cards over true physicals on the Switch 2 comes down to price. And especially around launch, it seemingly there was only a 64 gigabyte true physical card being offered by these publishers, or third-party publishers. And those are the most expensive Switch 2 sort of vehicles you could buy and have for your game. I think since then, we've been seeing some lower capacity carts being offered for cheaper prices in a sort of a tiered structure. This is not public knowledge, so I'm not really sure how expensive they are, and I don't necessarily want to speculate. But from my understanding, the game key cards also have a tiered structure depending on how large the games are and how much capacity they take up on the server. So from my understanding, it does seem like taking into account the different tier levels for size, both for the true physical and the game key card, the counterparts for the size levels that a game could be only differ by a few dollars at most. And there's not a huge price difference between them. But when it comes to scale and trying to distribute these games out in the wild on retailers who are subject to, various sales and whatnot, I think a lot of these publishers, especially your Square Enixes, your Bandai Namcos, your Capcoms, they all been favoring the game key cards just to save a couple dollars, because when it comes to quantity and the number of sales, a couple dollar difference can widen your margins significantly. So there are definitely publishers who have acknowledged the price structure differences of Switch 2 physical games and have adopted that into their pricing model. So we've been seeing, for example, a lot of Switch 2 true physicals be priced $5 more expensive than, say, the Switch 1 if they offer a Switch 1 version, or the PS5 version. However long that will still be available for. And I think this has been kind of widely accepted by physical media collectors. The question is, though, how has the general masses felt about the increase in price? Because I think there has been an understanding that there is a Switch tax in general when it comes to a lot of games. You tend to see Switch games, even third-party Switch games, priced more expensively compared to Xbox or PlayStation or Steam or wherever. And that has been kind of widely accepted. But with the Switch 2, it's even more expensive now because there has been a visible MSRP difference. Whereas maybe before, you would just see the differences in the Switch tax reflected in sales, where the Switch games tend to be just more expensive, even if they're on sale, compared to the other platforms. I think this has been a rising question, especially among publishers. Should we just do a game key card? Because the general population who just go to your Targets, your Walmarts, wherever, and pick up a game, they don't always know it's a game key card, despite the lower thirds of the box art displaying that it's a game key card. I think there's still plenty of people who are not deep into the gaming space like many of us are, don't really realize what a game key card actually is, and don't necessarily realize what they're giving up by buying a game key card versus a true physical. I think this might change in the future, but I don't know if it's going to be too late when the general population realizes these differences. We've been seeing this a little bit in streaming, where a lot of people have just, taken to music or TV show or movie streaming, but they've been noticing the not so great things when it comes to streaming service versus owning these games physically. And I think a lot of younger people have been acknowledging why physical media is important. And this might be a growing trend we see, but this is still just my concern when it comes to video games. Are we going to be too late? Are they going to just widely adopt game key cards, streaming services as the way to acquire our games? And we just totally missed the boat of when we could have saved true physical media and drive what direction we want true physicals to be. And so that's kind of what I wanted my video to really highlight today, because I think it's important to acknowledge, the pros and cons of all different ways that we consume video games, or really any media. But what direction do we want the future to go down? Because, Sony, they've decided that they're just going to go cold turkey with physical media. And they might offer some cold-in-the-box options for retailers to make them happy. But I can't imagine, once people start catching on, that they're just buying a game case with a piece of paper inside. They're not going to repurchase these games in the future from those retailers. So retailers are no longer going to be kind of part of the equation of how we buy games. We're not going to have more options to buy games. The prices are just going to be probably set at MSRP with very few sales for console games. And so I can't help but be concerned what's going to happen to games 5, 10, 15 years from now. What's the landscape going to look like? Are we going to be very limited options? Are we just going to be subjected to streaming services or cloud gaming at a certain point, which might make, these publishers happy that they've eliminated the secondary market, they've eliminated the middleman, and you just buy the games from them directly? And so I think while it's okay to buy game key cards, I'm never going to shame anyone from buying a game key card. If you look at the sales, there are people who do buy them, and enthusiastically so. Like, I remember when Pokopia came to the market earlier this year, a lot of people rushed out to buy that physical game key card case and not opt for the digital version, because even if they were strongly against game key cards at a certain point, they gave in because it was a favorite IP for them and they just wanted to have that tangible object to go on their shelves. And that's fine. Like, I understand why one would do that, and there's going to be so many updates on that game. A true physical is not going to really matter at the end of the day for that particular experience. But one thing I think we could do as consumers, instead of just kind of giving in to the so-called lesser evil, if you consider game key cards evil, is to really speak with our wallet and, tell these publishers what we want to buy and how we will not be driven towards that whole speed run tour of the digital future. And I think this is important to do, especially now, as things are just rapidly changing. And I think this is also a good opportunity for those who, they don't mind digital. I'm definitely not someone who's anti-digital. I own a gaming PC, and I don't mind buying digital, especially when it makes sense. But I think this is also an opportunity for us to push more consumer rights on digital purchases. And especially if the industry wants to go all digital, we should start now trying to advocate for those digital rights and ownership of digital media that we may be purchasing down the line. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about this and vent a little bit, because I've just been seeing the sentiment that, hey, Sony sucks, so game key cards aren't so bad now. And I don't think I could ever really agree with that sentiment because I think both are bad. And it's okay that both are bad. But what we do with that information and what we choose to purchase with that given information, I think is the important part. And I'd like to take the time to thank all of my channel members who help make videos like these, as well as all of my live streams possible. And a huge shout out to all of my Orbit Architect level members: Trin, Night Noctum, George, Just Another Joe, Dan, Scott Healy, Osman, Joe, Champagne Sherpa, Scarlet Sane, I am Aki, John, Heidi, and Glenavere. Thank you so much for all your support. But anyways, I'd like to hear what you guys think about this topic. After the whole Sony thing, are you pro game key card now, or are you trying to shift more towards digital ownership rights? Or have you, are you going to just give up on games altogether if physical no longer exists? I love to hear. And until my next video, bye everyone.